Welcome to the Digital Brand Builder Podcast, where we bring you the best growth strategies from the world's experts to help build your business fast. And now, here's your host, Mark Fidelman.
All right, today joining me is John Vuong. We're going to discuss building relationships with your customer base. I mean, this is a topic that I've been dying to get somebody who's an expert on, because it's one thing to attract them, right? I mean, you're bringing them in, maybe you've got a funnel, or maybe you're just interacting with them on social media. It's another to build a relationship with them, and John's going to talk about how he does that. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I'm delighted and looking forward to this podcast.
Likewise. Absolutely. And before we jump in, though, can you tell us about yourself in 100 words or less?
Definitely. So my name's John Vuong. I grew up in Toronto, Ontario. I own an SEO agency called Local SEO Search. And our premise is really to help local business owners dominate their local niche by providing more authoritative expertise and positioning them so that they appear more organically in nature online, on search. But that all boils down to really building a strong foundation in terms of relationship building and a trust and a strong foundation of letting them know that we're in it together as opposed to one-sided.
Okay, and then one of these days we should do like an SEO hacks episode, because I know you're very familiar with how to become more visible in search. But for today, we are going to focus on relationship building with your customer base. And first of all, before we jump into that, I want you to define it, because when I think of relationship building, I'm thinking like, what do you mean, John? Do we have to date our customers?
No. So relationship building is so critical, from the sales process to understanding, and just even in the onset, right? Like right now, information is so accessible, right? So before you even go on a call, a sales call, a funnel call, or whatever lead prospect that you have information at your disposal. So you can actually sniff out and do some due diligence and research on them, right? Do a LinkedIn search. You can check their Facebook out, check out the website. So it's so critical to do some information gathering before actually meeting them. So then you can have some personal insight on that prospect before actually going in. And that's the foundation of building a longer term relationship, because when someone's actually meeting you for the first time, they already feel comfortable with someone that already knows a little bit about them on a more personal level.
Okay. And so relationship building through social media, as I assume where you're headed with this, but first of all, how do you understand who your target customer is? Are these people that have already done business with you, or are they new prospects?
So again, that's a great question, because you need to look at the benchmark, right? So if you have been in business for a while, you kind of already know who your ideal customer persona is, right? So understanding who that audience member is, create a template of their gender, demographics, income, their hobbies, whatever, right? Like profile them, and then you kind of know who you want to go after. But if you're new and you're just starting off, you don't really know who that ideal customer is, like that customer that will provide you the best long-term value, lifetime value of customer, return on investment, etc. You need to understand where you want to position yourself. So early stages is a lot of surveys and a lot of understanding where you want to fit in terms of who you want to be known for and what kind of clients you want to attract. But if you've been in business for 3, 5, 10 years, you kind of understand who your ideal client is, right? So with that in mind, relationship building will depend on where you're at in certain stages of your business. So early on stages, it's a lot of trial and error, but then you're also trying to build solid relationships, because they might not be long-term customers of yours, but they already have that vested interest. Like, you're a good person. You actually looked after me in the long term. Although I don't need you, they're going to refer business to you, right? So depending on where you're at will depend on what kind of strategy you will put in play in terms of relationship building.
Yeah, and I always look at what my competitors are doing to see if it's working. And if it is working, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, I know that mentioning, this particular topic does resonate with this target audience. Maybe it's controversial, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's a pain point. But then I always try to put my own spin on it. It's like, okay, competitor A wants to solve this problem this way. Well, this is what we do. And hopefully it's not exactly the same thing. And if it is, you better put some personality, you better put something on it that makes you different than the other person. So that's another tip that I have.
Exactly. So resonate with your audience, right? So if you see what your competitors are doing, and I don't know how, it's hard to track the effectiveness of how their campaign is running, right? But you can have some intel when people are moving over to you to try your service, right? Like the big thing is once you kind of know who your competitors are, you kind of understand what their unique selling proposition, unique competitive edge is, you can kind of pick out what you feel would be a great opportunity to try out, right? And customize different campaigns for different, objectives and run different campaigns, right? Based on social to search to paid ads to whatever funnels that you have, right? But really understand relationship is the key. The personality building, creating that buyer persona is so important to forming a longer term relationship on whatever channels that you're looking to attract.
Do you advise companies to have their own persona, like a caricature of someone famous, or is it just the CEO's personality, or is it just a generic personality? How do you advise that person that's running this relationship building exercise or people to kind of position their personality?
So creating personas based on your ideal customer is probably the best persona you can go create, right? Once you have a defined persona in place. But early stages, you don't know who that defined persona looks like, right? Well,
what I mean is, okay, let's say you've defined your customer personas, you know who they are, you know where they shop, where they get their information, but then you have to decide, okay, what kind of boyfriend am I? I'm using dating analogies, and I know that's not what you mean, but who am I to these people? Am I myself? And if you've got a team of people that are doing this relationship building exercise, then you got 15 different personalities. Or
yes,
am I one personality that represents maybe, I know of companies that I've worked with that think of themselves as a celebrity. So what would Keanu Reeves do, for example, or say? Or somebody like the CEO if it's a smaller company.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. The big thing is, I would say, try to keep it focused on one person, right? And portray it and be authentic, right? So as much as you want to be a superstar, a rock star, someone famous, right? Be yourself as much as possible, because people then will realize if they are going to work with you eventually, what you're really all about, right? So the more, in alignment with that characteristic persona you have with how you run your core values, your business, and the people within the business and organization, it's so important to try build within your company to have that in alignment with who you are and what you value, right? Yeah. Versus having so many multiple personas. And then when you start signing up some clients, you're all over the place. People thought you were this person, and how this, they thought you were going to be like, you're completely opposite, right? On how you run your business, how your communication is like, right? So I always look at alignment. I always look at kind of centralize it and train within to have this ideal persona, and people will kind of resonate towards who you are as a owner typically, or that focused kind of person that you want to be as known as in that company.
Okay. So let's say we nail the personas of our customers. We've got our own kind of personality that we're going with, that if it's a team of people they've kind of adopted, or it's an individual and he or she is adopted, how do you begin that relationship building process? I mean, this has been a pain point for so many different people. It's like even me, and my problem has been, I've got so many things that I'm managing and working on at the same time. It's hard to kind of, stay constant with the relationship building. But let's say you're a full-time dedicated person to this. How do you advise they start to build those relationships?
So it depends on product or service that you're looking at offering, right? So do you have, what is the outcome that you want out of this? Is it a sale or a lifetime value of a customer kind of relationship long-term, right? So if you look at long-term and you know that it takes 3 months to actually sign a new client on because it's a larger ticket item versus like a product, which is, you can put an ad on Facebook or Instagram and people would just buy it, right? But if it's a software, a SaaS or whatever it is, it's a longer term. So depending on where you're at in terms of the buying cycle, but if you look at that and then you're like, okay, I need multiple touch points. I need to either, find who they are, you use software, figure out who that person is, then you engage with them, right? So that you can use a lot of social media tools, you can do email drip campaigns, you can do a lot of different funnels, right, out there to then harvest that relationship from email, social, to then that personalized communication to a point where they feel very comfortable, where they're now inquiring about your services, right? Where then you can even keep them in the loop with some newsletter drips or YouTube videos, podcasts, or whatever, until they're ready to buy, right? So again, depending on where you're at in terms of funnel, but the relationship always starts off with just figuring out who they are and who you want to attract, right? And then you slowly drip them based on customization of the message and forming that relationship.
Okay. So what specific things can people do though? I mean, that's a very good overview as to how you stay in touch with them, but are there things that you're trying to do with every customer, or is it you're focused on one customer, answering their questions or pain points or building a relationship with them, and then you hope everybody else sees it? How does that work?
Yeah, so we always have different groups, right? So we always have batches of, say, 50 prospects within this batch is this persona, and then we have a sequence in play. So it could be email sequence to social, multiple touch points on LinkedIn to Facebook to whatever it may be, right? Twitter or whatnot. And then email campaigns as well. So mapping it out is probably the most important thing once you have a couple successes, right? Because you're always going to pivot. You're always going to try and test it and there's no true way to know if it's going to work the best way. There's no real, 100% success, right? And we're always tweaking things constantly, right? And that's why it's so important to be in touch with the success and the, open rate, success or engagement rate to then actual conversion rate of each of these people in each of these batches, right? Once you have a better track record and it takes you 1,000 touch points or touch contacts before you get a couple of these prospects to then converts to a couple of leads and sales, then you have something to go off versus when you're just starting off this adventure of this funnel building, it just takes a while to understand it all. So my take on it is there's multiple platforms in multiple channels, and depending on where you're at with the stage of your funnel building, I would say, would depend on what platforms you're going to use the most. Okay.
Are you a gamer at all?
I used to play in my early days.
Okay. Let me ask you a question about, I like theoreticals. So let's assume that, I sell video games, mobile video games, and I'm just starting out. I know my target audience because I'm a mobile gamer myself. And I want to build relationships with these people to either try my game or once they're in the game, still build relationships with me because I want to sell them the next game that we're creating. Is there any specific strategies that you would deploy in order to make sure that the relationship building continues, or you are able to bring them into the fold because they're attracted to who you are as a company? Anything specific that you do?
So in terms of the gaming industry, I have some experience. I used to play like StarCraft or Red Alert back in the day.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's all app-based. So I haven't really been ingrained in terms of apps. But at that time, it was, I think, BattleNet. I would log in and there was a community, a forum, and there was a chance for me to communicate and speak and talk to couple people. I would add them as a friend. I would follow them, and whenever they're on, I would play with them, right? So the whole point is really tribe building. It's community based, right? So in-app communities are more powerful than ever because everyone wants to be a part of something and something great, right? And then they can have friends, which then that's really the relationship beginning of it all, right? So I think that's the whole point of gaming as well as any software or anything that you're kind of building. If you have a community, a tribe that you're trying to harvest, and constant communication from text messaging to chats to forums to in-app purchases to offers or whatever it may be, I think that's critical in that space.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more, especially with gaming. It is about community and bringing people, especially in app. I mean, you've got them, they're not going anywhere else. They're in the app, they're talking about the game, talking about strategies for the game, and just being some kind of participatory brand that's, communicating and updating and teasing their community members and encouraging them to kind of interact with one another by posting questions or hints or what have you. I think that's extremely powerful. And, why can't that work for all brands is what I'm always telling myself. It's obviously not every brand has an app, but it could be a Facebook group. It could be some other forum where you're able to communicate with people and ask and answer questions. And, I see some of this with the bigger brands, but I don't see a lot of it with the smaller brands. And maybe that's because it's just too hard. And if you're using a Facebook page, which doesn't have a lot of reach, that can be challenging. A Facebook group, I think, is better because, the more you interact with the Facebook group, it does show up in your feed. But wondering if you've got any thoughts around, bringing people into a community, no matter how small or big your brand is.
Yeah, so the key is obviously engagement within that community. How active are they? And how trustworthy are these members, right? Is it a paid community or is it, anyone can join, right? So there's a difference when it's free versus paid. When someone has money into it, they become more active, right? They feel like they're vested. So when it is a paid community, and I think it doesn't matter how big it is, it's how active. It's similar to how social media plays, right? Like if you have a Facebook group, but you have millions of members, but only 1,000 or 100 people are active, yet you have 50,000 members in another group and a couple of thousand are active. I think the engagement with the active members are way more important than the number itself. So how frequent are they playing on that game or checking out that group? Facebook group, how active are the members? Are they really forming that communication and feeding off each other, asking questions, being a part of different webinars and being, what I mean? Like it's all about just being engaged within each of these platforms and forums and communities. That's important.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. I was wondering if you've got any particular strategy that you have for building a community out of the gate. In terms of gaming, it's a little bit easier as long as they're logging into your game. You could see here the most active gaming members, and then you could ask them to answer questions that people just joining the community could have. But with products, it's a little bit more difficult to monitor, whether somebody's using your product or service especially if you're a small company. But wonder if you have any thoughts on building that community from the start.
I always look at it as like building a brand, right? How do you get your name out there so that you're a household brand or name? So you got to become that leading expert or authoritative figure, right? And how do you do that? Just like anything, it takes time, but you have to reach out to the right members and people by offering value, give something up to get some exposure, right? Which is a lot of things, which is sometimes it's paid. And product placement to influence marketing to whatever it may be, right? Giving away product, services, or whatever it may be, just to get yourself in the door and gain some recognition, right? And exposure. But once you start building that community and you have your funnel and sequence in place, then you start having a huge email list and you own your tribe. And eventually that's what every brand wants, right? That huge email list or that huge ownership of something, like all those favorite fans on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, right? All that is ownership of your own community. And then you can offer whatever you want without paying for acquiring that new customer.
Okay, wonderful. So what else in terms of relationship building do you recommend that we haven't covered already?
So I know we talked a lot about a lot of the digital aspects of building a relationship. I still feel like having a true relationship is much more powerful if you can pick up the phone and talk to someone, or if you can meet them in person. Right? Right now, it's mainly Zoom, and it's very difficult to scale. I get it. But if you can pick up the phone and have a decent conversation with someone, it goes way deeper and it becomes more of a personal relationship than a virtual relationship.
Got it.
Right? Yeah. And this goes on beyond, just building a relationship, but it's all about longevity of your business and keeping those customers sticky, right? Because if you look at lifetime value of a customer and why companies can really rely on word of mouth and referral business, it's because the relationships are so solid over the years, right? By doing the small things, like really caring for a customer, really taking that time to give them a call, ensuring that they're okay during this difficult time, right? Or whatever it may be, just personalize as much as possible. Feel like you really care, and that will make them feel like you actually do really care, right? So once you do really care, people will see it, versus you're doing it just for the aspect of, I'm trying to gain some more exposure and brand recognition or new customers, right? Because
that was my question was, how do you scale that type of activity? But it's almost like you do it for a few people and the word gets out. It's like the community members start spreading, hey, these people took the time to answer my questions and to reach out to me personally. And it wasn't done in a generic way. It was done in a very personalized way. And it just feels like, especially if they're important community members, that the word gets out pretty quickly.
Exactly. And it multiplies, it amplifies really quickly, right? Especially if it's a solid, active forum or a group that is you're part of, right? So give as much as possible, but really want to give, not do it just for the purpose of, branding or whatever it is that you're trying to grow your business, right? Do it because you really care and you want to help, right? And people can see through when you're doing it for the right reasons versus not for the right reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think there's an excellent conversation. There's so much more that we could talk about, but I want to give people a flavor for, your recommendations and your advice and what you do. We do have two final questions before we wrap things up, though, and I ask everybody this. And the first one is, what is the hottest digital marketing technology that you recommend people use today?
The hottest digital marketing.
Yeah, and I asked you this before, and you said Ahrefs.
Yeah, so Ahrefs is a link building tool that I use really because in my industry, it's really to see how many backlinks and follow the trust flow, how many referring domains, how much organic traffic. So in my industry, it's very important to understand links, right, in detail. And the power of links is still very important in terms of an SEO strategy. And that's why I recommend it based on my industry.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I'm going to have you back and we'll talk about SEO. So I've heard a lot of good things about Ahrefs. I just didn't know how to pronounce it. So glad you brought that up. Second question, who is most influencing you today in marketing?
In marketing.
And what you told me earlier was Seth Godin.
Yeah, so I've met a lot of very influential marketers in the world, right? Seth Godin, Gary Vee. I've seen them in action speaking. I read all their books. I do follow them. And there's a lot of influencers even in the SEO world, right? But when I look at marketing or just advertising in general, I always look at who is the top tier in terms of global. And those are the people that have made strides and people actually pay to want to watch them speak, right? And they've had a lot of books written for them. So for me, it is Seth Godin. I saw him in action. He is so unique. And this is what it's all about, right? You got to be different. You got to provide a personal story, but make it unique to your own audience, right? Build your own tribe, figure out who you want to be, but don't follow others because you're unique. You're going to want other people to follow you, right? As much as you want to see what your competitors are doing, don't worry too much about them. Make it your own, right? Because you want to be the one that everyone is chasing, right?
Yeah, good point. So thank you for that. Thank you for answering those questions. My last thing is, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Definitely. So you can check out my website. It's www.localseosearch.ca. But in there's a team page. You can actually look for my name, John Vuong. I'm the owner. And you can follow me or link me on LinkedIn and reach out to me on a more personal level.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So again, I want to thank you for being on the show. Great topic. We're going to have to schedule an SEO version of this maybe in 3 or 4 weeks because I'd like to go over that with you. I'm sure you got some hacks and specific strategies. And it's one of my things that I'm most interested in, especially for long-term searchability of my clients. So lastly, if you enjoy our podcast and if you enjoyed what John had to say today, please write a review for us in the Apple Podcast and Google Play App Stores. Your reviews are encouraging and do help us to choose specific guests that are helping you. So please go and do that right now. John, thanks again for being on the show, and we'll talk to you in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Mark, for having me. I look forward to speaking to you again.
A reminder that we are not financial advisors, and anything we talk about or refer to on the show should not be considered or construed as financial advice. We encourage you to do your own research and come to your own conclusions.